Okay. I we are live, and there have been some very exciting and dramatic things backstage getting ready for this show. And given the nature of what Trey does, I'm going to blame that on him, even though it's probably user error. But
Hey, you
anyway,
sound like my wife. Everything's my fault.
well, not everything's your fault. I
Yeah,
have my own husband for that. So,
yeah. There you
I am so glad that you're here. I'm going to tell people a little about you because you're
go. Hmm.
very humble. So, you might not tell them just how wonderful you are. But Trey is the current director of the Oxford Paranormal Society and the Anomalous Studies and Observation Group. He is based very close to me. He's a little farther east. He is a really brilliant researcher, not a bad writer either. His book, um, The Meadow Project Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch, if you haven't read it yet, you're going to want to by the time we get off the air tonight, because I'm telling you, some of the experiences that you had there, Trey, blow my mind. And I'm healthy now. I can do a
Ah,
10-mile hike with no problem. So I'm ready to go when you are. And to me, and I actually put this in the show announcement because I think it needs to be said, which is finding another area with the level of activity that would even allow it to be compared to Skinwalker is unbelievable to most people. A lot of people, and I've been reading about Skinwalker since I was in my
right.
20s.
Sure.
Okay, from various authors, various experiencers, people in the area that have written books. And I had no idea that this was something that was within reachable range for me. I mean, I go to West Virginia, I go to Pennsylvania. I don't have a problem with travel, but I never thought that a location like that would be anywhere that I could get to. And don't get me wrong, Skinwalker has some things that create physical problems. And I know that you have seen some anomalies that made you concerned for your team members.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's pretty cool. And also, I want people to know that you're an Eagle Scout, so you don't lie.
Oh, I try
So,
not to.
as well as you're honorable and you're honest, and you have got so many security credentials through the military alone that your reputation is impeccable. You also are not prone to um, really whimsy. Um, I think that your your degrees are in, well, I know that you're at West Georgia,
Hmm.
and so with their psychology program,
Yes. Yes.
the you know you've got every honor society, accreditation through that, um, and you've got to be pretty tough as well as honest and brave because you were trained as um, anti-terrorism as an anti-terrorism officer and worked as one.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
over
were
in
in
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, thank you so much for your service. People that do what you do, no matter what field of the military they're in, people that go and do that, because we're a voluntary force right now. And thank you. That's so
Oh.
brave.
Oh well. What I tell people is I am an ordinary guy. I really am just as ordinary. If you see me at Waffle House, I'm just an ordinary guy. I've just had some really extraordinary opportunities and have been in the right position to take advantage of them. So
But
but
you
thank you.
chose to also.
Yeah. Well,
You chose to take that.
I always believed in a life of service. So that's kind of how I've structured my life. I'm happy to say that I am now retired from Department of Defense. So
Yay.
I tell people DOD and all the anti-terrorism and intel stuff and all that was my job, my job.
Right.
This is my vocation, is researching
Yes.
high strange. It's what I really love to do. And I love sharing my experiences, with the entire world because I think they're important. I think they're not my experiences to hold tight, like some sort of secret. They're the world's experiences. And
Yeah.
hopefully at best people will be enlightened and at least they'll be entertained.
Well, your book is both. I was and I was stunned. And you shared some of your evidence with me,
Hmm.
and I'm still stunned. I I get blown away every time I even ponder it. And I know people around here who are serious Bigfooters as well. And they are in some of our national forests and doing things. And I haven't approached the subject with them because most of them are just, focused there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find it funny that they do believe in a zoological anomaly, but that's all they want to go with.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is what it is.
It's kind of cool you mentioned that. And I'm just going to give a shout out. I don't know if you're familiar with my good friend Greg Ogles, who did
Mhm.
the Legend of the Downy Booger.
Yeah.
So Greg has a new film coming out in January called Cryptid. Let's see, Cryptid Encounters: Land Between the Lakes. And part of that is he talks about in this film, while they were traditional Sasquatchers, is they were encountering, this plethora, this rich tapestry of extreme high strangeness. So, I extended an invitation for he and his crew to come out to the meadow, and they had some remarkable, activities and experiences out there as we started to delve into the interconnectivity of all of these different phenomena. So, you'll get to see, some of the team in action out at the Meadow when that film comes out. It premieres in January. So I'm going to give a shout out to Greg. So you'll actually get to see, some of the stuff, on the big screen. And we just publicly sort of released the famous Portal video last Wednesday on Discovery Channel. So it was analyzed and it passed all those tests. So we're starting to get that out there for people to really ponder and to think about and come up with their own conclusions. Their belief system is their belief system, believe it or not, but it gives them something to think about.
Well, and it's something that people have to take the research on seriously because I don't know, some of it is like interesting, some of it was kind of like whoa, you know, some of it was like really no way. And then I started looking into you more and I'm like this dude is so for real. And it just my mind was blown for 6 months until I started being able to wrap around and think, well, okay, it happens other places that I'm aware
Hmm.
of. Why
Right.
can't it happen
In
somewhere
the
in the South
Southeast.
too?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that these locations, these geo concentrations of high strangeness, are all over the world.
I
And
agree.
if people, do the diligent research, go to the various data banks, be it UFO, Bigfoot, hauntings, whatever, and they really start doing the research and starting to look at where these things happen geographically, you're going to find these hot spots, and I call them geo concentrations of high strangeness. And that's where you take your big red pin and stick it in the map. And that's where you put on your boots and your pack and you go. And you let the experience happen. And two things that we look at in the anomalous studies and observation group. First of all, the empirical data. Data is king.
Yes, it is.
So, we try to capture as much data we carried. I got Geiger counters. We were out in the field last weekend and had some amazing radiation spikes. Uh, so, we were really big on trying to capture the data, be it physical data, instrumental data, or video data or audio data. But data is king. But next to the king is the queen, which is experiential. That's the human
Yes.
beings having their experience. And that experience is so vast and so powerful that it oftentimes eclipses what we capture empirically. The best piece of paranormal or high strangeness detection equipment is a human being. So we take, I draw from, my skills with a degree in transpersonal and humanistic psychology. And I bring those to
Mhm.
the field. We brought a psychoanalyst on our team who is now doing hypnotic regression with some of our team members, and that is just blowing everybody's mind. The stuff that's coming out
Wow.
of that, it's it's a little unnerving, but nevertheless, there it is. And then we're bringing other techniques like the famous God helmet developed by Dr. Robert Persinger. And so we actually have a God helmet that is field deployable. So we have a power
Really?
system and everything, and we can take it out into the field and actually hook this up to people, and stimulate their amygdala or the hippocampus or whatever we want to do with the programs, stimulate that part of their mind to open up their awareness. And what we have found is when we take one team member and open up their awareness, it's almost like it opens up a doorway, and other people experience things that did not go through the God helmet session. So there's some metaphysical aspects to this too. So what we do is bring all of these tools in a big toolbox, and we apply it to the situation at hand, and just quite frankly see what shakes out.
Well, what do you and not to be too simplistic, okay? But when you say that people are sharing their God helmet experiences
Mhm.
with team members, are they are they simply a knowing, or do they feel the
Mm.
physicality of the
Yeah,
moment?
yeah. It's like the God helmet. Just, and this is subjective, but it seems to prime the pump for high strangeness. And I'll give you just a fantastic example.
Okay.
The first time we had the psychotherapist and his wife out with us, and we had done some of the team members had done some God helmet sessions then. And this is where it's going to get really weird, but just hang with me.
I'll hang
like,
in there.
like all of this stuff isn't weird. But so we took one of my senior researchers, Mr. Darrell, took these two new members up on top of the ridge, and people have probably heard me talk about the ridge up above the meadow. And while up there, the wife, Christy, said, I'm feeling uncomfortable. You know, I don't, I don't feel safe. I feel like something is slinking around watching us. And she said she got this feeling like Gollum, from Lord of the Rings was, down in
Right.
the
Okay.
debris watching us, or watching them rather. So she said, Daryl, is it okay if we go back to the other teams? I'm not comfortable. And he said, absolutely, of course. Our job is not to make anyone feel uncomfortable, and your comfort is important. And if you're having these feelings, those are important. So they made their way back across the ridge uh, to to where we were. But while they were walking across the top of the ridge, right below the ridge, where they couldn't see it, was an orb tracking them. And
Okay.
this was witnessed by somebody else, a very reliable witness. And so we get back, and she tells us about this weird feeling. We're like, it's this place can be a little unnerving at times. And we saw the orb, so something is going on, and we didn't have much activity the rest of the evening. So we went back to camp, and she said she had a dream, and the dream was that she and her husband were in their tent, and the top of the tent opened up, and there was a woman and a young, teenage boy looking at them. And in this dream, they were taken up into a white room, and the woman wrote symbols on like a big whiteboard. Symbols didn't mean anything to her, but they were so just indelible, just marked, etched into her mind that she remembered them when she woke up. And I'm going to show you a photograph of the symbols here. Is if you can see
Go up a
those,
little higher.
it's a series of spirals.
Oh my goodness. Those are recognizable.
Yes. So that's what came out of the dream. So she and her husband came over to me the next
What's
morning, and
her what's her background?
She is a or was a special education teacher, and I haven't really asked her much about her, background, but
Okay.
she was not familiar with the symbolism. And I asked
Okay.
her, I said, Christy, are you familiar with the symbolism of the spiral? And she goes, no, not at all. Have you read my book? She goes, no, I have not. Have you heard any podcast or lectures or anything? No, I have not. I said, the spiral represents and is used in many cultures as a symbol for a doorway or portal.
Yeah.
And I said, and what is really important about yours is you drew a squared off version of it. That's box like.
Hmm.
The portal that we believe we captured on video was box like.
Yes. Yep.
So, it just blew everybody's mind. And we were all very excited about that. So, next evening, later that evening, we go back out to the meadow and we have our team set up with our thermals and our night vision and, all of our stuff. And we get back to camp and we're doing the debrief. And one of my thermal operators said, yeah, did y'all see that bear that walked across, or that large hog that walked across the meadow? I'm like, what? He said, yeah, there was it looked like a big hog. We were talking about the wildlife around here, and, how to be careful and everything. And I said, did you record this? And he goes, no, it was just a hog. I said, man, listen to what you're saying. Is we were in a field with a dozen people surrounding the periphery of this field. It's wide open. What animal would cross an open field with so many human beings in 360 degrees that would be able to pick up somebody's downwind or upwind
Right.
rather? What kind of animal would do that? And he stopped and he goes, oh no. I said, do you remember what Christy said she felt like was happening the other night? And he goes, yeah, something was slinking around the meadow. I said, you go back and you read Keller's and Knapp's book, Hunt for the Skinwalker. What was one of the things
Yep.
that was reported with Nids and Bigelow? Something coming out of a portal and slinking
Yes.
along. So he fell into his normalcy bias.
Yes.
He saw something and we rationalize things. That's just human beings rationalize everything, sometimes to our own demise. And so we missed that. So, I mean, it happens. Things happen. People are human beings. But those are the kind of things that we started using the God helmet, and this perception just seems to open up. These experiences are starting to evolve in very strange ways. Ways very different from what we were experiencing back in 2017. We now have people being touched by unseen forces. So
That's new.
yeah, that is new. It was very strange. We have another area probably about a mile away from the meadow. And this is going to sound hokey. We call it the field of nightmares. We have the field of dreams and the field of nightmares because we had to call them something. So anyway, and I don't know if you're familiar with Katie Page from Colorado
I do know Katie.
and Jessica Jones.
Hmm.
And so them and some other folks of our other team were out there in the field of nightmares. And Jessica felt something. She stood up and kind of went, ooh, and something had grabbed her bottom through the bottom of her camp chair. Reached up and squeezed, but there was nobody around. It was just them. And
Right.
then Katie Page's traveling companion that came down with her felt something reach up on the back of his hoodie and yank it. But once again, there was nobody around him. So the phenomena is changing. It's becoming very personal to people. So that's kind of
And
exciting
forward. And
and very
forward.
forward. Well, and almost like it has a comfort with us maybe now that it
Hmm.
didn't have before. So
Well,
it is.
and I haven't met Jessica. Katie's very cute.
Mhm.
Yeah. Maybe it liked them and then was harassing, you know, the
Yeah,
gentleman. I mean, people are always trying to make everything be so "Arr," and sometimes
yeah,
it's just that they want to interact, and
yeah. Like
but
I
then you
told
have the other
another
side.
yeah, I told another researcher. I said, don't make it a problem, because he was talking about he captured something. He's a well-known Bigfooter, and he captured something on his trail cam. That was like a shaft of light, almost like what we saw in the meadow on our thermal, with the entities.
Mhm.
And he was kind of freaked out by it. And I said, don't make it a problem if it's not a problem. If it's not
Right.
hurting you or bothering you, just, I think there are these entities that exist, either outside of our visual, acuity in the infrared or ultraviolet, or they exist just in and out of our dimension, and just let them go about their business, unless they start hurting
Yeah.
you. They're just other people you see on the street. Just let them cruise on
And
by
if
and
they're not
give them,
interested in you, then just
yeah, give them a
deal
hat
with
tip
it.
and say good morning and, go on your way.
That's a great point because when you're dealing with anomalies such as this, it's especially, you know, organic animal type experiences. We are trained to, you know, Bigfoot is big and smelly and scary and, not at all like Harry and Harry and the Hendersons.
Hmm.
You must always fear that. Well, I think that you would treat it initially like you would any scary animal that can take your head off your shoulders at a moment. But you should also consider that they've been known to exhibit human tendencies, just like aliens, just like all the other anomalous things. They're not always big, scary, horrid things. Sometimes they just are beings that are sharing space with you for the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
And
you said,
yeah, that's like your normalcy bias. Human beings have survived as long as we've survived by treating unknown as danger until we discover otherwise. That's how
absolutely. Well, that's
we
why we
survive.
still are here. Yeah,
Right. And so that's hardwired. That's not something you learn as a child. It's hardwired into our DNA.
it's primal.
It's very primal, it's very reptilian brained. And
Yes.
so when something happens that's out of the ordinary, we're like, oh, danger, danger, Will Robinson, run away. And so, that's how a lot of people react. And one really cool thing with a lot of members of my team, they're, military, law enforcement, emergency medicine, people that are used to very high stress situations, and they understand how to receive a written order, how to execute a written order, how to request permission to change operational plans. So everybody has this very tight construct on how we operate our investigations, and they can say, "Oh, okay, this is weird. This is a little scary, but we've got a plan and a mission, and I understand what that is, and I can stay on task and focus on that." And that kind of helps keep everybody pointed in the same direction instead of running around, like, unfortunately, a lot of people, they get their cell phone camera, they buy a FLIR to pop on the bottom of that, and they've got a digital recorder, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm now a paranormal investigator,
Which is
and
never the
they're
best way.
yeah, and they're just not really prepared mentally for how weird this stuff gets. So it's been a successful successful combination that we've had, and we continue to plan on using it, as long as we're around.
Well, it's doing a good job so
Yeah,
far, right?
so far. Oh yeah.
Katie and I were talking about her visit there, and because I saw her at Contact
Oh, good.
in the desert, 2 years ago. But she is one of the people that I would trust to have my back. I
Hmm.
mean, she is very. I've interviewed her. We've met face to face, had conversations, and good times and good conversation. I would definitely trust her
Hmm.
to have my back on something like that. I think that she is professional.
Hmm.
She has been a MUFON field investigator all the way up to her current position.
Right.
So, and that's why with your team, when I was hurt and couldn't even consider going out with you, I would never be hesitant anymore to do that because, well, I wasn't hesitant because of you. I was hesitant because I knew my weakness at that time.
Hmm.
But there's not a person that you have told me about or we've discussed at all, just situationally, based on their reactions, I wouldn't hesitate. You've got a great group of individuals. As you said, they're all mission ready, they're all mission aware, and they dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And Katie was a valuable asset as a guest investigator,
yes.
and so she had her own experiences out there. So
Mhm.
I'll be meeting her at the end of this month in Colorado. So, yeah, she, I always like to have guest investigators, guest researchers come in and experience this stuff for themselves for two reasons. Number one, it's always a good idea to get a new perspective,
Mhm.
and it's always a good idea to get another set of eyes on the issue because it lends credibility to what we're doing. Where somebody that's totally unrelated to our program can say, "Yeah, I was there. I saw shadow people. I saw orbs. I heard disembodied voices." And so, yeah, she's been out a few times, a couple of times out to the meadow, and her schedule's so busy now, it's hard to get
Yeah.
our schedules linked back up. But I want to get her back really soon.
That was unusual, but we're here.
Yeah, I'm still here.
We had a glitch in the matrix. Um, okay, me too. I just don't even have any idea what just happened. Probably the topic. I know that when I discuss things of this nature, sometimes glitches happen,
Yes,
and
things
I'm
can.
sure you're aware of that too.
Oh yeah, things can get wonky for sure.
And sometimes they're human, and sometimes they're not. I'm sure that people are very interested in your work.
Yeah,
But
you and I have talked about it before, and if you can think of any new questions, yeah, unfortunately, do this stuff, and about three-quarters of the way through my second book. Hope to get it out. I'm a lazy writer. I apologize. But I am about or three-quarters of the way through my second book. So, uh, there's some new experiences will certainly be in that, and some really cool revelations. So, but just some of the things I think since we last talked, I'm just looking through my notes here that we've had. Of course, I said we've entered the God helmet. So, we're
yes.
doing that, which is
Well,
really.
I did have a question for you about
Mhm,
that. I jotted down. You
sure.
know, um, is this the first time that you're aware of that people are sharing God helmet experiences?
There are some other groups that probably the one that comes to mind is the team that filmed the documentary Hellier. Is
Mhm,
they did have a God helmet they took out into the field.
mhm.
And so they had very similar experiences of it. Once you start stimulating, especially the amygdala, is having these experiences. We've had various people that will hook up to this thing. Unfortunately, it's a pretty pricey piece of equipment, and the only time that most of the team gets to see it or use it is when we're out in the field. I use it here at home, every once in a while. But so that's a real force multiplier, in my book,
Mhm.
and something that our psychoanalyst has brought to the table is guided meditation, and we have had just some absolutely phenomenal guided meditation uh, opportunities while out there, in the vicinity of the meadow back at base camp, where during guided meditation, he'll say, you have a white screen. Think of what's on that screen, what the universe is trying to tell you, and remember it. And it's like a light hypnosis thing. And he brings us back and he says, okay, everybody, what did you experience? And we have people experiencing the same thing, sensing the same thing. Or we have people tuning into things that have happened at the meadow that they don't know about, things that happened, several years ago.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We did this last Saturday, and we went through the guided meditation, and kind of the same thing is, you're presented with a white billboard, a white wall. What do you need to see will now appear. And one of our guests said that I had an image of a white circle with a black dot in the middle of it. And I just started laughing. He goes, "What's so funny?" I said, "I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to believe it, but it's in the book. I've lectured on it before, so it's out there. It certainly predates today." Is our dear departed friend, Bob Wilson, who just passed away in March, had an amazing UFO encounter there at base camp, right where we were sitting when we were doing this guided meditation. And the way the UFO presented itself, initially it was a beam of light, and then a white orb came up. into the sky, and it moved sideways and stopped. And then a black dot appeared in the middle of the orb, got larger until it completely obliterated it. And he had tuned in to that experience back, I think, in 2016. It never even knew that it had happened, but he was at the
That's
same place and experienced the same sighting through guided meditation.
that's
So just
astounding.
just another tool in the toolbox.
Your toolbox is getting full. You're gonna
Yeah,
need a big
it's
toolbox.
hard to lug around sometimes.
I know, right? Well, is that the strangest? Um, is that the I don't know how to phrase that. Is that the most interesting shared experience level of high strangeness that you've come across? Because that's
Oh,
very specific.
yeah, it's very specific. Let's see, golly, we've had so many really strange things happen. The thing about the crouching, slinking creature, and then us actually seeing one the next night was very odd. That was
Yeah. That's a little
it's
freaky.
it is kind of freaky. And so I've up my game. I now carry a 44 Magnum instead of just a 9 millimeter. I'm kidding, but I
Well, if you think they're bore, it's not a bad idea.
yeah. So
So,
I mean, I do carry a 44 Magnum now, but uh, yeah, that's it's that synchronicity. That's kind of where it's at now. It seems to be, this phenomena was very physical,
mhm.
uh, and now it kind of evolved into, when we were doing SD session, maybe a little more interactive, and now it's becoming more. I'm not going to say psychic. That's not the right word, but becoming more organic
Consciousness?
with our consciousness. Very good. Yes, absolutely. So, that's the kind of thing that our stuff is actually kind of evolving to. So, we're going to continue to run down this track. We're not abandoning, all. Well, I still carry a rucksack full of gear and all of that. We had amazing radiation spikes this past weekend, which were just, unexplainable. But, we're starting to branch out a little bit more and try some many different things. And so far, we'll throw something out there and see if something nibbles on it. If it does, then we'll try that again. So it's really cool. It's evolving. As that happens, our team are also evolving.
Mhm.
They're becoming different people, becoming more
They would just about have to.
tuned in. They're becoming more aware, and it's almost like we're evolving as human beings.
Mhm.
And so it's a just a wonderful experience.
Why do you think, um, with this evolution, what do you feel like is what do you think is feeding that? I know that, I mean, is something allowing this to be a growth experience for all of you? Is this something that you feel like you're being groomed for something else?
Ooh,
Or because, there are there are interactions that people have with all different type of anomalous beings. We'll just go with ETs at this point.
right,
But they're often educated through that excuse me, through that interaction. They're groomed in the way that a professor would groom a favorite student, or groomed not always in the positive methods. Um, I have interviewed and spoken separately from an interview process with women who have had ongoing relationships with
right.
different kinds of beings. It just is so there's so much that could be construed from this interaction, but it doesn't sound like anybody, I mean, grabbing someone's butt, that's a juvenile thing, probably somebody that hadn't seen a female butt. I mean, I don't know. But as far as the stalking sounds a little alarming.
Yeah,
The
that's
fact that she was that uneasy as a root cause result of it.
yeah. and I don't know if that was she was sensing something and it was unusual, and because it was unusual and she was in a very strange
Right.
environment, it's like, oh, let's get out of here. Uh, oh gosh, I'll tell you this: is our hypnotic regressions that we've done with several team members,
Mhm.
and I still, they're still undergoing these regressions. I can't really go into depth on what
Well,
what
of
what
course. Yeah.
happened, but their experiences could be interpreted as horrifying or enlightening, depending on what kind of face you put on it. And, I'm not going to say what kind of experiences they
No, you
are,
don't. No, that's
but,
personal.
there's been books written about stuff very similar, if you get what I mean.
I do.
Uh, and
Is that
so,
happening away from the meadow?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And something else, I think you're talking about things happening away from the meadow, something that happened just probably 30 meters from where I'm sitting right now, 40 meters from my back door of my house. I'm in my cottage now. Is if you read some of the books about the experiences of Bigelow's Nid's team out at Skinwalker Ranch,
Mhm.
is hitchhikers.
Yes.
Things following people home, and I've had things happen in the house, that are kind of odd. Things, there one moment, gone the next, reappear the next day, stuff like that, but nothing, malevolent. Uh, and some of the things that you hear about in the books, specifically. And Keller talks about when he went back to Virginia after the NIDS research that his family started seeing large upright canines
Mhm.
outside of his house in Virginia. And I'm going to pull up something on my phone and just bear with me.
I will
But
bear with you.
outside the back of my house, I noticed some tracks. Very, 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 very close to my back door. Like I said, about 40 yards from my back door. And and what it was is they were gigantic canine tracks. And when I say
Like
gigantic, I mean huge, like
like
6
wolf?
inches, bigger than that, like 6 inches, you know.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, so I'm gonna show you some photographs of
That's
those.
my hand with nails. I
Yes.
mean, I
Yeah,
can't wait to see this.
yeah, and that's a 6-inch scale at the bottom.
Oh my gosh, Trey. We don't
So,
have anything like that.
yeah, not around here, no. I mean, we have coy wolves, but that's about it. No,
That
that
they're not that big.
no, no, and it was huge, and I thought, "Okay, where else have we heard about, large canines?"
Yes.
And it's like people that investigate high strangeness. Now, what is the correlation between that? Quite frankly, I don't know. Uh, when Ted Phillips talks about some of the stuff that went on out at Marley Woods,
Mhm.
and they talk about sightings of large canines, walking on two legs in the farms around that area there in Missouri.
Right.
Uh, Nobody really knows what the correlation is, but there seems to be some sort of correlation, with this. And now that people are starting to be a little more open minded about high strangeness, Bigfoot, you're starting to hear about wolf men or dog men.
Now, dogmen are something I'm familiar with,
Yes, yes.
but go ahead.
Oh, and it's just there seems to be some sort of interconnectivity between places of high strangeness and then dogman sightings either at that location or at the location of experiencers. So and I saw these humongous gigantic canine tracks behind my house. I'm like, okay, I've heard about this, I've read about it.
Were
So
they how many tracks were there? Were there like the 2 and 2 or were they just
it was kind of hard to tell. It was kind of a degraded track line,
Mhm.
and I could not tell really if it was bipedal or four. I couldn't really get a feel for it. And I'm trying to find the photograph where I laid out a larger rule. Yeah, there we go. That's a 36-inch yardstick. Let's see if we can see that.
got some glare?
I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah,
no, that's okay, but
you're probably not going to be able to see it.
tilt it with the top toward me a little more. That's a little better, but still not very
Yeah, yeah,
much.
you can just see the
I
the
can see the
tracks.
imprints, yeah,
So
my
it
nails.
it kind of looks like not bipedal, because you
Mhm.
don't have like a, a 36-inch stride. You have, maybe a 12-inch
Sure.
between like a front leg and a back leg. So, but nevertheless, they're huge, huge tracks. Now, I've had people say, well, yeah, was it, a dog in wet mud? And I've taken my dog out there in that same area in wet mud, and he's like 100 pounds, and his tracks aren't even near that size. So,
Well,
just
and
something,
probably not that deep too.
no, that's just something else to, kind of put in your weird stuff bag, and,
Carry it
see,
around.
yeah, carry it around and see if, something else pops up to corroborate it. If not, just
Well,
chalk it out as a weird experience.
you know, um, a friend of mine who's passed, but Butch Witkowski was who first started educating me on this topic because I found it fascinating. I'd heard about them up in the Wisconsin area, all through the Great Lakes region, really, but um, he was in New England, and so I was amazed. He was out with friends because there had been reports of wild dogs, and they were farmers and stuff, so they were looking for them. And bipedal canines just came walking by, and he said they were built like gym rats,
Hmm.
and it was all of them were just, and there were like 3 or 4 armed men,
Hmm.
right? And they were all, I mean, they were well armed. And as these beings went by, Butch said, yeah, we didn't move. We were told, raise the weapon and you're dead.
Yeah.
And they believed that. Not a word was spoken. So the communication, like with most spirits and with ETs, was telepathic. So to me, that was just a fear factor almost, because if these men were intimidated by this or controlled by, or just took the wise way out, right?
Right.
I think probably that was a wise reaction, because how s- how spooky, freaky. You've got them walking by you, which nobody expects to see happen, and then you've got this telecommunication happening that is a definitive threat.
Yeah, that's something that, we're kind of getting a feel for, and I'm not going to call it mind speak. That's probably too specific of a term, but
Right.
like the dream of the spirals,
Hmm.
and then we had another case, and I think you and I might have talked about it. It was in my first book, where we had gone out and done a CE5 session, in the meadow.
Yes.
So, we went out there and we did the crop circle sounds and, all of that stuff, and, projected intent. A lot of the teams trained in remote viewing, and we got nothing, just bumpkus, nothing. And so we just ended up sitting around there talking, just enjoying each other's company, which was a beautiful evening. It was a wonderful time. And so we get back to camp, sit around the fire some more, and turn in. And one of my team members comes up to me, and is a gentleman, highly trained, graduated with a degree in engineering from the U.S. Air Force Academy, worked special operations for a while, and now is a expert in his field. His name is Tony. And he said, Trey, I woke up about 4:30 this morning, and I had a term, and just like etched in my mind, these words. He said the word was Nox Magbee, and if you spell it phonetically, it's Noxmagbee, Nox Magbee. He said, and then I woke up again at 6:30, and these same words were just etched in my mind. And he said, I just couldn't shake it. I just had to tell you about it. He goes, does it mean anything to you? I'm like, well, no, it doesn't. But let me look into it. Let me try to do some research. So I started doing research, and I found out the word Nox, Nox, was pretty common. It was actually the Roman goddess of the night, and they derived that from the Greek goddess Nyx. So we have the goddess of the night, and Magby turned out to be a little bit more difficult. So I started really looking into ancient languages and all, and I actually found it in Old English, which was a form of English that was spoken right about the time that the Romans had left Britain. And the term was in the Old English poem Beowulf that we've all probably read
Yes.
in high school. And the term was magba, which meant children or kindred. So we put those together and we have children of the night goddess. Now, what's interesting is, the early Old English speakers would be familiar with Nox because the Romans had occupied
Mhm.
Britain for several hundred years. So the terms are contemporary. And so now we have children of the night goddess. So that was in my team member's mind. So we were doing CE5, and if you think about it, what are small, like children,
Yep.
with big heads that come into your bedroom at night?
Yep.
And it's not your 3-year-old coming and said, "Mommy, I threw up on the bed." It's something a little different than that.
A little different. Might
Yeah.
be one in my room.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Right off your left shoulder. So yeah, it was. So it's that mind speak, and so the empirical part of you says, "Oh, that's all fanciful thinking." But I think you're a fool if you don't at least consider it. You really need to think about that.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the kind of stuff that's starting to evolve, that's starting to bubble up to the surface. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I'm really interested to see where this next step leads us.
Well, what do you think? What outcome would be the best outcome? I
Mm,
mean,
yeah.
this research, Skinwalker, I am old, not really too old, but I've been interested in Skinwalker, anomalous topics, UFOs. Well, the UFOs because of you know young person experiences, and then Skinwalker because of a little bit older exposure to things before it was really even
Yeah. Thing.
you know a thing. Because I read a lot, and I've always read a lot, and I read whatever was laying around our house, and my grandma read weird stuff. So, as well as, you know, little old lady novels and, bodice rippers, whatever, plus science and, you know, poetry, very weird exposures. But, yeah, this is something that has been evolving the whole time that I've been interested in it. You know, the fact that I do shows about these topics, I don't think was a coincidence. I think that I'm where I'm supposed to be with the research that I'm doing, and to be exposed to people like you that are doing almost like sidebar, working together topics. I'm dealing with going old school with
Hmm.
investigations so that you don't just assume that every being out there knows how to use electronics. Most of the ones that you're interacting with probably do, and you know, much better electronics than we have. But and it's not even electronics with them, because a lot of what I'm seeing, and I'm sure that you might be able to vouch for this, is that these are not necessarily um, machine
Hmm.
operated
Yes.
apparatus. Okay.
Yes. Yes. You
That
are spot
mm,
on.
and so to me, I find it fascinating, because what I found fascinating growing up, which was the Star Trek version of things, and the boy that lived next door to my grandmother had, an Apollo capsule tent and everything track, and he actually wound up writing for Star Trek later
Hmm.
on. He was my daughter's script writing teacher. But he's who put that fascination in, and we blame him for that. I tell my husband all the time, it's not my fault. It's Lee.
That's right.
But it really is something that this is evolving and evolving and evolving, and the level of experiences. I mean, you had people that you lost
Yeah.
in an experience, and for people that haven't read your book, I do want you to share that with them. But yeah,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
reaction with that.
Yeah. That's kind of a sad, very sad subject. Is we had the experience with the portal, and I'm going to use that
That's the
word
one I was.
because
Yeah,
it's handy. The word is handy. Uh, and we two of the members that went into the portal, and then came back, albeit came back out. They're dead now.
I
Uh,
didn't
the,
know both of them were.
yeah,
I
yeah.
did not know. I'm
The
sorry.
first one was Tim Gillardin, U.S. former U.S. Army Ranger, had dual degrees from Georgia Tech in psychology and physics, worked in the AI field for one of the major automakers. Uh, Died of what we think was a pulmonary embolism. Was just fine and then just died.
Mhm.
And then Bob Wilson, our departed friend and family member, died in March. He was the second one that went in there. And after that experience, his cancer came back with a vengeance. So, does correlation mean causality? No, but we would be a fool not to consider it. So,
You
I always
always
tell,
have to consider that.
yeah, I have to tell people that, if you look at anecdotal evidence, at, anecdotal tales, you look at the recent declassified Defense Intelligence Agency report on the effects of high strangeness on the human body,
Mhm.
specifically Air Force pilots in that study. If you look at Dr. Nolan's research on people that have experienced high strangeness and lesions on the brain similar to MS, there's a danger to this.
There is.
And that you really have to be, and before anybody thinks about, oh, well, I'm going to go buy a Geiger counter and psionics night vision and go out there and do this myself. That's cool. I highly encourage people to seek their own answers, but it can come at a cost, and people just need to be aware of that. You do your own research. Read about read about some of the experiences and physical effects that have affected people, and you make up your own mind. It's even gotten to the point now that we had some pretty weird radiation spikes this past weekend. And, I'm considering, having the team get dosimeters, that we carry Geiger counters, but actually, monitor the dosage of radiation that we're, being subjected to while we're out there, just so we're safe, and if we get to a dangerous level, we can stop and minimize our contact and exposure.
Yes, that's something that I didn't realize when the gentlemen that work at on the Skinwalker Ranch show who are there,
Yeah.
and you know Travis literally was burned, and that was real,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
really blew his mind.
Yes.
And yet, you know, they didn't have the meters.
Yeah.
They, and I bet you there's one in his pocket somewhere when
Yeah.
he
I'm
got
sure. I'm
there
sure
too.
they all have dosimeters now. There's another interesting case that, and poor Eric. I don't know if I hurt his feelings, and if I did, I apologize, Eric Bard. Is we were talking in Vernal, and he said, "Oh yeah, well, an episode, blah blah blah." And I'm like, Eric, I'm sorry, I don't have time to watch the show. I'm just so busy. I don't
I'm
watch it.
researching it myself. Yes.
And but we were talking about radiation spikes,
Yeah.
and one of the things in one of the first seasons is they had a radiation spike of about, I think it was about 0.03 microsieverts per hour, and it jumped up to 0.13, and they showed it. And I'm pointing at the TV and I said, "Ha, I got you guys beat. It's actually written about in my book, that
Yeah.
predates all this." So,
Yeah.
these radiation spikes are an indicator. What do they mean specifically? I don't know. We scratched our heads. We had spikes from zero point zero 0.06 microsieverts per hour to 0.20 microsieverts per hour while we were setting up an experiment out in the meadow this past weekend. We were all scratching our heads. We could not figure out what it was. So, it's just one of those things. We're just going to continue to investigate and try to crack the egg, on these mysteries and see what's inside.
Well, I have a question about that.
Mhm.
They've I I know a lot of the people that work out there.
Hmm.
And, and I haven't talked to anybody in some time, but do you feel like are you getting your radiation spikes in specific areas? Are they just randomly throughout the
Just,
property
they're just
or
they're random.
they
It's
are
just,
random?
yeah, they're not in the same area, and we're trying to figure out if those spikes are precursive to something. So far we haven't. They're just so sporadic and they're so random. But we did do an experiment. This was, I'd have to look at my notes. This was back in February of 2023, so it wasn't that long ago. And we had taken some dowsing rods out there. We hold with the L-shaped rods, and they
Mhm,
cross and all that. So we're doing some question and answering, and it appears that when we'd ask a question, yes and no,
mhm,
that we were getting some responses. And I had my Geiger counter sitting on the ground, and one of the questions asked, this is a piece of equipment. It measures radiation. Can you make this piece of equipment read 0.13? That's a very specific number, and it did 0.13 microsieverts per hour. So, and I have a photograph of the Geiger counter reading 0.13 microsieverts per hour. So, what does that mean? Is it sentient? Can it do parlor tricks for us? Does it want to communicate? Uh, are we influencing the environment somehow? That in ways we're not aware of? Does this particular geographical area enhance our abilities? And we're creating the phenomena because of something magical. I use that term loosely, but something very special about that environment. I don't know. And I'll tell people, I get to ask this question, what do I think is going on? Not only do I not know the answers, I don't even know what the questions are. We're just trying to experience it in the here and now and try to make some sense of it.
well, I think that you're doing a pretty good job because you have been working on this, oh my goodness. You had already gotten into your book before I heard about you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so and I follow you, pretty carefully, and so, I think that there's always the possibility that we are affecting our environment. I
And
do
that's,
not feel like we would be able to change a radiation shield, radiation force. Um, that would be but you know what? The human brain, it's so powerful. We don't even tap into a third of it.
yeah. And you go back to some of the experiments, psi experiments like with Uri Geller and others. And, there are people that can physically affect their surroundings, the environment with, mind power or whatever. So, as part of this evolutionary process that we're going through as we continue this research, I have to wonder, are our abilities becoming manifest? Are we starting to be able to do things and influence our environment, albeit in very small ways, where we weren't able to before? Is the change not the environmental change, but is rather inside of us? And that's why we're starting to look at some of the psi stuff. Some of the hypnosis, the
Mhm.
meditation, the God helmet stuff, and we're trying to put that intelligently into the mix to see if it somehow changes things. And it seems right now cautiously like it might bear some fruit.
Well, what made you decide to use the God helmet in this environment?
Well,
Because it's very specific.
yes, it is. And I've been familiar with Dr. Persinger's work for several years. And I come from a university that kind of has that
Right.
focus. And what really drew me to that is Dr. Persinger uh, talking about how they could generate religious type experiences using electromagnetic stimulation of the left and right amygdala and hippocampus.
Mhm.
And I thought that was very interesting. And he actually, I think he termed it neurotheology, which was the study of how the brain creates religious experiences. So you go back and you start reading, UFO lore, all the way back, back into the 50s, 40s. Is some people, when they encounter the others, they have a religious experience, a euphoric experience. It changes the way they look at the world. Many people that have had encounters say, I look at things differently now. They showed me things. They showed me things about myself. Then you fast forward and you look at some of the work, like with Dr. Alpert, who was later known as Ram Dass, Dr. Leary, and some of their studies with psychedelics and opening up the mind and the experience. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to take this piece of equipment that we can control and manage the application of the stimuli, i.e., electromagnetic fields on the brain, and put it into one of these areas of high strangeness and see what happens? See if people have visions, which is really weird because some people have visions while doing the God helmet, some people don't. Some people have feelings. I had a well known guest researcher who felt a presence. Like he said, who was standing next to me during this whole session? Like, dude, nobody was standing next to you. You were in a pop-up tent by yourself. There wasn't a person within 20 meters of you. And, see if we can prime that pump, if we can make people more receptive. And in making them more receptive, can they communicate? Can they perceive? Can they receive? And can they bring back with them maybe additional insights?
That would be the coolest.
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, because then we would have answers to the questions that bother us so, right? Like,
Yeah.
where are you from? What do you anticipate happening here?
Right.
What are you looking for with this interaction?
Right. And that's really interesting because a lot of people, in the community, and you've heard this yourself, is think that we're on the verge, on the cusp, and I'm not going to say a great awakening, that's too strong of a term, but of an epiphany as a species as it relates to, and I'm not even going to call them extraterrestrials. I think they're paradimensional. I think they're extra
I agree
dimensional,
with that.
and I believe that, with it, all I have is I think it's not, you know, Zeke and Bubba, and Zeta Reticuli getting in their intergalactic Cadillac and driving over here and giving us a wave as they go by. I think it's interdimensional. It's more of a kind of a John Keel way of looking at things as they pop in and out of our existence. So I think they've always been with us, and maybe now they're willing to make their presence a little bit more known. And maybe that presence will be made known to certain select individuals that are ready to receive whatever message they wish to convey.
Well, it's kind of like priming a pump, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you get people with good reputations, intelligent people, people that understand how to communicate well, and like yourself, like your team, like Katie. Oh,
who?
please, whatever. But I mean, you read a book about this topic that I could get through with no problem. Okay.
Yeah,
You did a good job. So it is a good book. Go buy the book. It's fantastic. But one of the things that I feel like is if we are, if people think we're being primed for something, okay, if
yeah,
people feel like we're on the verge of species epiphanies, but we have to be able to get the message. We have to be able to have the information given to us in a way that it's going to stick. You're going about it in a very scientific method, which is fantastic because it will not be able to be questioned at the rate that you're going. I think that people have been getting this information
yeah.
for quite some time who were not in a position to comprehend it, or when they
Like,
tried to share it, you know, the poo poo police showed up and, oh no, there's no way. But then you have the people who initially were reporting this in our era, and it was a horrible experience for some of them. And, my my mind goes to Barney Hill, who had such a traumatic
Yeah.
response that even when he was doing his regression, it was horrible all over again. And, you know, it was, and I heard some of that regression. It was so genuine. So there were some that had physicality, but I do think that dimensionality has to be involved here
Yeah.
because because a you're not going to travel those distances. I don't care what kind of rocket ship you have. You have to be able to be an interdimensional being
Mhm.
to get from point A to point B if you're not right here. That's why I think we are not able to achieve. We don't have a grasp of that.
Right.
Yeah, there's people working on it, but
Yeah, human beings are multidimensional creatures. That's
yes.
I was trained formally in remote viewing, the military style remote viewing,
Mhm.
and people poo poo that all the time. Go look in the
It's a real
Stanford
thing.
yeah, go look in the Stanford Research Institute archives and the declassified CIA documents. It's a no kidding a real thing.
It is a real thing.
And so when I was finally gained the capability to remote view, I'm like, okay, so how can I be at this point looking at something, or how can I look into the future or look into the past? And then you start realizing that everything that is, was, or will be exists now, which is
Yes.
really kind of cool because that's actually written about in the Bible. I am the Alpha and I am the Omega. So it shows
Yes.
that there's a singularity of existence, past, present, and future at the same time. So when you start thinking about that and you start talking to people that have been at the Monroe Institute or Silva Mind Control or remote viewing or any of this other stuff, that we have these abilities in ourselves. And you start thinking about it, it's like, okay, the human brain, is it this squishy thing inside of my skull? Is that really my brain? Or is that a three-dimensional shadow representation of a four-dimensional organ that exists elsewhere in time space? And this is all I can conceive, but through meditation and you know, some people argue psychedelics and other stuff that I can kind of open up that experience, open up that awareness, and now I can experience these other dimensions. And oh my goodness, there are other things out here, that want to say hi and play patty cake and take me to lunch, at the barbecue joint,
Or have
whatever.
or have me for lunch.
Yeah, right. Have me
You
fun.
know?
And so I
I'm
think
sorry, I
that
couldn't resist that.
that's fine. Yeah, I'll just tell you what I did is when I saw those big canine tracks, I
Right.
just put a big sign with an arrow. I said, Birmingham that way. So they're headed to you. Uh,
Thanks a lot.
that's
Appreciate
right.
that.
Go west. But anyway, so I think
Young
that
dog man.
that's dogman. Uh, so I think we're kind of, maybe as a culture, some of these things, that if I'd said this stuff 20 years ago, people would say I'm crazy. And there's probably people that say the same thing now. But I think people are more receptive to it now because there's been a lot more scientific study and there's a lot more people confident and comfortable coming out with their own experiences. So I think that we are, we're on the verge of basically becoming aware of what it really means to be a human being, and we're not trapped by, this meat suit. That there's much
Right.
more to it. So I'm very very happy about that. I'm very excited about that. And then of course the ultimate question is what happens to us when we die. And I honestly believe, not only my belief system, but I think just the stuff that I've studied that is we don't go anywhere. We just open up into another dimensional awareness, and we just rock on and have the time of our lives, and we're not bound by all of this.
I would agree with that. And I don't really know why I'm so convinced of that. I mean, I haven't died. It's just, but pretty close. Had a placenta abruptio that was kind of dramatic. But it's so bizarre because I know that you were not a man of woo. Okay. There's no woo woo factor in it's really not much of a woo-woo factor in you at all, but you're open to things that most people with your mindset are not. And I find that fascinating because it's such a big deal
Mhm.
to be able to, say, okay, I'm going to be stepping back from this part of me to consider this part of me. And then this part of me is having these experiences that are blowing my flipping mind, but I saw it myself. So there must be something to it. And yeah, you were talking about the hallucinogenics and things of that nature. I was listening to a Fulberg colonel, um, retired, talk
Mhm.
about his experiences.
Mhm.
And a lot of people that he cares about were, doing the sky and experiencing things. And I was so blown away because that's not something that I had really made a correlation with. It was the first time that I knew that people were taking this part so seriously. Okay. And I I think that anything, and I've always thought that something, because when you're tripping, it is affecting brain parts that we don't often use. And however those pharmaceutical or just the psychedelics are doing that. I mean, I've been with people who were the most dour people on the face of the planet who were just hysterical and found themselves hysterical.
Right.
And you couldn't even have a conversation anymore because I couldn't stop laughing because everything
Was so joyful.
was so joyful.
Yeah.
And that they were the last person on the planet that you would have anticipated being that person, right? I mean,
Yeah. You
so
know,
it
it,
is very much opening.
yeah, and there are other ways, to go that route. There's sensory deprivation tanks, which if nobody's ever tried it, I highly suggest you do.
Especially in
Uh,
salt water.
yeah, you're in saline, you're neutrally buoyant. You
Mhm.
lose sense of self. And so all you have is a sense of mind. You have no sense of body. And so that there are many paths to get to that place. Psychedelics, DMT, psilocybin. Those are a path, but there are other paths too. And now that we're actually starting to talk about that, when I mentioned Dr. Alpert, Ram Dass, Dr. Leary, and those guys, they were ostracized, at Harvard when they were doing the experiments with this, and then LSD was unfortunately popped into the scene as a recreational drug when it really
Should not have been.
should not have been. It was more
Yes.
for mind expanding under controlled conditions. And now that many medical professionals and scientists are starting to look back at that and say, we have people that had uncontrollable OCD. We give them a controlled dose of psilocybin, and now they had an epiphany that crap just doesn't matter anymore in the big scheme of things, and they're much happier and calmer and much more caring people. Veterans that have had horrible experiences, and are suffering from PTSD, are given microdoses of LSD, and that they come out different people. Because it rewires, like you said, it rewires the brain,
Yeah.
and it kind of gives us a roadmap of where we actually are in the universe, and we're actually kind of in a cooler place than we realize. But we're so trapped in the here and now, and unfortunately, oftentimes dragging the past behind us, that we fail to
Yes.
realize that.
Well, and it would be nice if we could just pop some in the water for the next couple of months
Yeah,
and just have everybody just, do their own little trip, come back and be, normal society again.
yeah,
But
yeah,
they're not.
yeah.
I
Go to
shouldn't
the
have said that. They may actually go,
well,
oh,
go to the next meeting between the Palestinians and the Israel, and pass around a special
here,
canteen,
have,
and
yeah,
everybody.
or here, have these cookies.
And that's right.
Yeah.
So I
But
think it's now that we're kind of more open to that, I think some of these other aspects, some of these other considerations are more accessible to your common people. Graham Hancock had just a fantastic
yes.
series on DMT called the God Molecule. I'm trying to remember what it was called. But fantastic series.
I don't
So
remember.
yeah, something like that. It's about DMT, and so I'm kind of optimistic, about things. You know that I'm at a place in my life where I'm at a good place. I'm very happy and very content, and I just would like to see others get to a like place.
Well, I totally agree with that. And that's what we should be working toward. It's not rocket science, it's human science, it's
Yes.
biology, it's humanism, you know, it's transhumanism. I mean, we just need to let go a little bit.
Yeah, my wife and I kind of tease each other. We were both children of the '70s. We went to university in the '80s,
Yeah.
and things were a lot looser back then. Everybody, you could have a good time and didn't have somebody, taping it, on their cell phone for immortality to come back and bite you in the butt, in your 50s.
Yeah.
So people just need to
Thank
kind of.
God for that.
Yeah, no, I know. I was a
I'm just
I was
saying, yeah,
I was a
not that
fraternity.
there's anything anybody should be, looking for, because
Yeah,
it was all before online, and
that's
it's
right.
gonna
I was
stay
a
all before
I
online.
was a fraternity guy in the '80s, but yet I was still able to keep a top secret clearance. So, just thank God nothing, was permanent or
Well
recorded. And it was just a much more laid back. We weren't so dang uptight. We didn't have these
well,
stupid things all the time. You're constantly
which
feeding
have
us garbage.
already changed our wiring systems.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, just that, because, if you've got all this
yeah,
radiation coming through here, change yours every so often, people, because you
yeah.
want to be balanced, get each lobe done just right.
Certainly
It's
don't sleep.
crazy.
Yeah, don't sleep with it next to your pillow. Don't do that. But yeah, so maybe here in the next, hopefully in my lifetime, that we'll see that that societal epiphany, and and we can move on to the next phase of what we're supposed to be. What God wants us to be. If
Yeah.
you believe in that kind of stuff.
Well, I do believe in that kind of stuff, but I also believe that he did, create everything. So if there are other people, for general term, if there are others who are out there too, I mean, God made the heavens and the earth. Well,
There you go.
there's a lot to the
Yeah,
heavens. And just because we're the only species that we know about that's, you know,
and Deuteronomy says, "The secret things are mine," saith the Lord. So we certainly don't know everything.
by jingo. We're so cocky as a species.
We really are.
We really are. And it's so funny because we don't really have a right to be.
Yeah,
We've got two people floating around right now that all the government rocket scientists on the planet cannot get home. And we're sending up the computer guy,
yeah.
to go up and bring that back.
I was actually thinking about that this week. Is how arrogant we are. I just
Yes.
read an article today about quantum transfer of information that it appears that it travels faster than light. And it uses quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance to move data from one proton to another proton, and it gets way down into quantum physics and all of this stuff. But so we're transferring data, albeit on and off binary zeros and ones with the position of these protons. But we're moving data faster than light. How is that possible? If you talk to scientists, several years ago, nothing travels faster than the speed of light. Well, it is. So, when this high strangeness comes up and people say, "Oh, this can't be possible. It's not scientific." Really? So we didn't discover the Van Allen radiation belt, I think, until 47-ish. I might be wrong. So does that mean it didn't exist prior to that? Or we just
Right.
didn't have the equipment and the knowledge to detect it? So, I think that, as people take this research further, and hopefully, there are people a heck of a lot better funded than me, because I'm not funded at all, looking into this, that we can, maybe start to communicate and reach out to our brethren out there in the ether, wherever that is.
Wherever that is. That's what's so funny because we're always so sure that we know, where everything is in space. But and we're told that communication would not possibly occur past a certain distance, right? Well, we just reached out however many miles to fix a bad computer on the Viking. Wasn't it
Hmm.
Viking? Yeah. And that was a fair piece. But we
Yeah.
were able to reach out and fix their computer to get it functioning and feeding back to us again.
And I'm going to get, Mr. Peabody and Sherman's Wayback Machine, and I'm going to go back in time. Back, you mentioned Star Trek. I remember, watching the original series as a kid, and they
Yeah.
had these wonderful things called communicators, and they had tricorders that had
Yes.
all this knowledge
Tricorders. Yeah.
held in their hand.
Yes.
I can talk to anybody in the
Hello.
world on this,
And send them your picture while you do it.
and
Yes.
Dick Tracy, with his radio watch,
Did I
was
ever
just
tell you about my Dick Tracy story?
no.
I was um I was trying to book Stanton Friedman, right?
Hmm.
Do you know who that is?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Stanton
Well,
Friedman.
anyway, so I was trying to get Stan to come on with me, and I called and left a voicemail at his home. So he called me. I was working on a project in the guest room with my girls, cheer stuff, and I'm doing stuff. And I had my first Apple Watch at the time. And so it goes off, and I don't recognize the number. So I just hit answer. And this voice goes, "This is Stanton Friedman. Someone here tried to reach me about doing an interview." And I'm like,
Uh, 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 uh.
"I'm going to have to call you back. I'm going to have to." And he was like, "Well," but I said, "No, really? I'm Dick Tracying you. I have to get to a phone and call you back." He said, "Well, I said, "I'll explain it in just like 2 seconds."
Right.
So I ran in the other room, grabbed my cell phone, called him back, and he was like, "What is this Dick Tracying you're talking about?" And I mean, after meeting him and stuff, I can just
Yeah.
see
Right. Well,
and I
well,
was like, "You were on my watch, Dan." It was on my watch. I
yeah.
was talking to you on my watch. And he thought that was the most hilarious thing that he'd ever heard, and he came right on with me. So,
Very, very good.
I thought
Yeah.
that he was going to, like, toss me to the side. So you're
So,
right.
yeah.
And even he was blown away by that.
Yeah. So you were
So
a cheer mom.
I was a cheer mom and a football mom and a
Yeah.
soccer mom, and now I'm a football, baseball, and soccer beba.
There you
So
go.
that's what I was doing today was a command performance with my grands because, I had not seen them in forever.
Yeah. I was a
And
cheer dad, from
oh my
5 years
gosh.
old all the way up to college when she cheered at college. So
So did you make the noisemakers with the milk jugs and pennies and all the fun
uh
things?
no, she would just she didn't do that. She did have, of course, the megaphone,
Yeah,
and she was an all-star cheerleader and then in high
right.
school. So, it's just a fascinating, fascinating thing as a dad to watch. And, bless her heart, she didn't understand football. So, the other team would have the ball and she's like, "Move that ball." I was like, "No, no, 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 you don't want them to move the ball."
How could
No,
you raise a young woman in Alabama and her not know
yeah,
football?
it's
There
funny.
is something wrong with that, Trey.
It was funny. And then she cheered for Jacksonville State. And, it's like, okay, just do whatever the squad captain says, you know. Anyway, so
That's
she's
so
now a
funny.
nurse at Children's. So, they
Oh,
grow
good
up.
for her.
Yeah.
They do grow up. Mine's an educator,
Mm.
and the other one went to New York to live in the Big Apple, and she decided that the South was better, so she lives in Charleston.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my son is still here too. So,
Yeah.
but
Both.
it's funny though because they're the ones that are experiencing all this stuff in real time, and they
Yeah.
don't seem phased at all.
No, no, it's not. And it's funny you should mention that. You remember when the Go Fast and Gimbal and Tic Tac videos came out,
Yes. Yes.
and the Department of Defense finally said these are real videos taken
Yes.
from F-18 Hornet fighters by trained, accredited naval aviators. These are
Yes.
100% real. And so, when that hit the thing, I'm thinking, okay, so now you have these naval aviators most likely have advanced degrees in aeronautical engineering.
Yes,
These men and women are brilliant.
they are
Uh,
brilliant.
they put them inside of one of the most sophisticated data collection platforms there is, an F-18 Hornet, with all
Yep,
radar and infrared and pretty much anything you can think of. And they're trained observers. They know how flying things work,
yep,
and they're scratching their heads. And now it's out there for the whole world to see. And I thought this is like
yes.
this. This is the biggest story of my lifetime. And everybody was like, when does the Masked Singer come on?
I
And I'm like,
know,
well,
right?
you know, so it's like, I don't know if it doesn't register with people on how important this is, or they're apathetic, or they're so used to like watching X Files and stuff like that as kids
Ancient
that they're,
Aliens,
yeah, Ancient
X-Files. I
Aliens,
mean,
and
and
they're
Star
like,
Trek has
oh,
been here since we were children,
yes,
okay? So and they've grown up on the more advanced, I mean,
yeah,
lasers and, boop, boop, and stuff. I mean, they've grown up seeing this stuff their whole lives. So I think what you didn't mention and what still blows me away today is the fact that um, Kevin Day, lost the radar operator
hmm,
on the in that carrier group, but there were a fleet. That was not just a couple of you know little tic tacs flying around there. There was a fleet,
yeah.
and when I don't know if you've gone to a scientific coalition on UAP studies yet conference.
I have not. I'm actually a member of SCU, and every time it comes up, I've got something going on. And they're like, "It's right here in Huntsville. Just drive up here."
Well,
And I just can't seem to find to fit it in my schedule.
I didn't get to go this year because of my schedule, but I'm going to tell you that you need to go
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because that is some of the best information. And for everyone listening, it is Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're based out of Huntsville. They are nothing but rocket scientists. And to be a full member, you have to be a PhD at least once. And, but you can go and learn about
Yeah.
what's actually happening now. And it's brilliant. The founders are brilliant. You've
Hmm.
heard most of them on the show. I haven't had Peter on yet, but
Oh, okay.
I've got to finish that book he wrote because, big book. But it's a great organization. They do a conference each year. Go to it. You can actually, do it virtually. Look into that. But I did not know you remember that. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that group. But that's where I learned about the fleets, and I also learned because I already knew about the Roosevelt Group, which nobody was talking about. And the Roosevelt Group, for those that don't know, was the Atlantic experience that was just like the Tic Tacs, but I don't know that they were able to capture it on video.
Yeah.
I've never seen a video from that. Have you?
No, not from the Atlantic. Most of it's been, in the Pacific, like kind of off
Yeah.
of Catalina, places like that.
Yeah. But the Roosevelt Group carrier group was also accosted by a fleet of craft. And one of the things that they keep talking about is air safety, because when they're doing air maneuvers, the pilots are concerned that if somebody screws up, well, there you have at least one, you know, craft damaged, if nothing worse.
Yeah.
And, but it's a real possibility. And that is what is getting the attention.
Yeah. It's, it's several, it's aircraft safety.
Mhm.
It's national security. If we have things entering into U.S. airspace and we don't have visibility of it, we
Yes.
at least need to be concerned about it, because what's their intent?
Yeah.
And if anybody says the government can't keep a secret, I'm telling you professionally, the government can keep a secret. They can bury
They're
a
very
secret,
good at it.
and then they take the shovel they buried the secret with, and they bury that shovel. Then they bury the shovel that buried that shovel. So it's like
Yes.
way deep. So I think that, and I'm the one government intel guy that I never worked on UAPs. I had nothing to. I'm not Nick Pope. I'm none of those guys. I had nothing to do with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do know that they can keep a secret, and the
They're very
government
good
is
at it.
extremely pragmatic, about stuff. So, if they're concerned about something and they're willing to put the money into looking at it, and if you really study Robert Bigelow's experiences with Skinwalker Ranch, and you understand how special projects work, if you read the book Skinwalkers in the Pentagon, you,
Yes.
you can see how that a special access program was set up. The contract was let to Bigelow Aerospace. They
Yes.
set up the National Institute for Discovery Science, and the DIA funded that research for whatever reason. And so when Robert Bigelow is being interviewed, and people say, "Hey, what did NIDS discover out of the ranch?" and he says, "I can't tell you." He really can't tell you. Number one, it's not his information. The government bought that information,
Yeah.
and he was read into a program, and under penalty of law, he can't discuss it. So, I've always wondered, when will that stuff be declassified? Because it has to be amazing stuff, and that's something that I really, I want to put out to the community, especially in people that are studying and researching areas of high strangeness. Let's talk. Let's all
Yes.
communicate, because if there's an area of high strangeness, I talk to people. I was talking to somebody yesterday, in the community that's pretty well known. Is if something is working at your site, or you have an indicator or a phenomena,
Yes.
tell me about it, because I might be experiencing it too, or I might have tried what you're trying, and either it does work or it doesn't work. And we can really, through a collaboration, come up with a really solid set of protocols for predicting, detecting, and capturing, this phenomena for everybody to study.
Might be a big deal.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is, because I have found, you know, just straight paranormal, ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, whatever you want to call yourselves. They they do not necessarily share their methodologies when they're new, and yet we all know the Estes method, the Estes method. We all
Yeah.
know that now. We all know, which kind of cameras seem to work
Right.
better, in which environment, right? People in the paranormal field share information. People in official positions within varying areas of high strangeness, either like with Skinwalker, for the majority of the time, it has been under government control.
Right.
I don't know that it's not still, to be quite honest, but they're
Yeah.
going public with it to maybe desensitize the public to some of the information. I don't know, but it just seems to me that and I don't know of very many places like, I know of places I've experienced that seem to have anomalous activity in them that were not spiritually related,
Hmm.
and they just made me go, "There's something very strange here." I don't know what it is, but, um, I'll talk to you about some of those. Yeah, you might know some of them, but
Yeah.
it just seems to be so closely held. I don't hear about places. I know of a bunch of haunted locations that
Right.
people always want you to go and investigate somewhere they've been to see if you get the same experience. I don't hear about that happening with what you do.
Uh, you know, there's several reasons for it. I think is people are very particular about their locations, and I get that because I don't disclose
Well,
my
you protect
locations.
yours. Yeah.
If you talk to my mind just Tom Fierro, with Marley Woods, he's kind of careful about who he shares stuff with, because if people find out about the exact location of Marley Woods, and, there are people that know the exact location of Marley Woods, it'll be inundated. And not
Yes.
all researchers are ethical, professional, and competent researchers. And I'll
True.
give you a story. This is a Bigfoot story. Is Anybody that's watched the Bigfoot shows remembers on Finding Bigfoot when the place that came out was in the Uwharrie National Forest, in the
Mhm.
Carolinas, and the place they specifically mentioned was a campground called Yates Place. Excuse me. And so I went up to Uwharrie with some researchers from that area, well-known researchers, and we had come in Friday night, and Yates Place wasn't very crowded. It was just a few of us, and we set up all our tents and stuff. And I woke up on Saturday, and the place was absolutely full. I just packed with people. So we go out that evening, and all you're hearing are wood knocks and howls. And it's like, okay, so how many of those are legitimate,
Mhm.
and how many of those are other people howling and doing wood knocks? And Team A hears a wood knock done by Team B, and they don't know of each other's existence.
Yes.
So now they're communicating, and it's a farce.
Yeah.
It's wasted time. So
Yes.
people, that have the knowledge of these locations are very particular about it. Now there are some areas that are private that you can get an invitation to. Mount Wilson is one of them. You can go out there if the owner of the land and all of that, and do stuff. Uh, and unfortunately, there's another aspect to it is the monetizing of it.
Right.
You know, and the sad truth of it is we don't get paid a lot of money to do this stuff. You know, I I have not made a lot of money off my books. I make even less on my appearances. And so when I, buy a $4,000 thermal, that's out of my pocket.
Yeah.
So people are looking at ways to monetize further research, and unfortunately, unfortunate byproduct of that is a certain degree of secrecy and reluctance to share, something that might, monetize their experiences, or funding might pop into their world. I know I was working on a potential show one time, and the producer said, "What equipment do you need?" And the show never came to fruition. But I thought, that's awfully enticing. That's and you would have to sign an exclusivity contract. So unfortunately, being self-funded, that's kind of the world we live in. So I don't think it's anything malicious. I think people are just being practical
Well, that
and trying,
makes sense.
yeah, and trying to do the best they can.
Well, one thing that I do really think, and I know that you're having people who have a background who are experienced researchers who, you know, I mean, it's a badge of honor to have been to the Meadow. It really is because that shows the
Yeah,
level of trust that you have
yeah,
in those individuals. And I think that by having people like the ones that I know who have been there, it's just it's smart because I don't know a single person among my peer group who has been there that was not blown away
yeah,
by the activity that happens there.
yeah. Yeah, it's
And
it's it's funny you mentioned that, because right here at a file cabinet, just off my left hand, is I have a file of NDAs, and some of the names on those NDAs people would recognize, because I'm
I'm
like,
sure
I
they
am not
would.
telling you where this is until
Yeah.
you sign this. And that was one of the things that was a deal breaker with Discovery. It's like, production company, you're going to sign this NDA before I give you the latitude and longitude, so you can do your analysis of some of my data.
Yeah.
So it's a way of protecting it. It's not being mean. It's just a way
Well,
of
that's not
continuing to
being mean
yeah, it's being
because
practical, I think.
you do. And, another thing is that it's your credibility on the line because of your time of research there and what you've brought out and what you've made public.
Yeah,
You don't want people going in and saying, "Oh, well, this is a load of malarkey," when it's not. But to get ratings, people do a lot of things.
yeah, and I have kind of open invitations to some pretty well known people, Ryan Skinner, James Keenan, yourself, that can come down to the Meadow when they find the time, because I think these experiences are very special, and I want other people to experience them,
Mhm.
and get a taste of the magic. because that does two things. That broadens their mind, that broadens their experience as human beings, and it also puts another set of eyes on the situation that helps me.
Yeah.
Another perspective. That quite frankly, I've got a lot invested in this project, so I'm not always the most objective person. So I can have somebody come in that doesn't have the emotional, monetary, and operational ties to this. That can look at things from a different perspective and keep me on an even keel.
Well, I think my perspective would probably make some of your researchers go,
I don't know.
"Really?"
We
So
get out there sometimes.
well, I am a researcher. I am a
Yeah,
true researcher. I am not somebody that, if I'm having an experience, then I'm going to let other people know
yeah,
that's happening so that tools can be
deployed.
utilized. Because if
Right.
you're just trying to keep it to yourself, then you miss an opportunity to perhaps document something very special. And
Yeah,
by the same token, I'm not going to say something's happening if it's not because of the same reason. You
it's
know,
kind of funny you mentioned that because we'll run into that. We'll be sitting there and there'll be these disembodied voices and shadow people. And
yeah.
people sit there, and not say anything, and somebody say, I think I just saw a shadow person, and everybody will say, yeah, I've been seeing him for 15 minutes. Like, guys,
Oh,
tell me about it. Come
say
on.
it. Just
Uh,
say it, right?
or I've been hearing these voices for about the past 20 minutes. Hey, we all have. Oh, come on now. Who got out their tape recorder? I don't know. So
Well,
it's
I'm going to let you know that I will always have, because I always have tape recorders
yeah,
going.
yeah.
So I've got 3 or 4 that I really trust a lot, and David got me an H4 for Christmas.
Oh, very nice.
So it's a really nice. I've got Tascams and I've got some little Sonys that are like strap them on your arm kind of
Right.
things, and then I've got my H4 that goes with my camera rig.
Yeah,
So
we just got a H3 that we've got to get some external mics and stuff for. But yeah, it's that's something that kind of is funny too because you lay all your gear out and you're like, okay, I can't man pack all of this stuff to the meadow because
no.
so what do I carry? Then I go out there and we're having disembodied voices, off in the distance and samurai talk. And it's like, yeah, the parabolic mic is back at camp because I had too much stuff to carry. So it's cat and mouse, which makes
Well,
it
it is,
some of the
and
fun.
you know, I'll tell you what, you can always put that parabolic on your back, resting on your backpack.
Yeah, oh yeah,
That works. I've
yeah.
done that before.
But unfortunately, on my backpack, I've got my bump helmet with my night vision and a camp chair and
Yeah.
a big ATN thermal and all this
My
other stuff.
thermal is not that big. I have just a fairly simple but mine is an actual tool,
Yeah,
and it takes photos and it records.
yeah, yeah,
So I like that
yeah,
aspect. That's why I got that one.
yeah.
But and it's fun
Oh yeah,
because it's real time. So as opposed to like my video cameras that are not always real time until I go back through and I see stuff. But
yeah,
I'm a gear freak. I'm a
yeah,
gearhead, is what my husband says. I said, "That's not the same thing," but and a gear nerd.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, my wife is like, "I thought you already had one." Yeah, but this records kind of in this spectrum. This one's a little bit different.
it's
You
just
know,
that much extra.
yeah,
Just need that little extra bump.
uh,
I feel you, David. Fortunately, David is very supportive of that
yeah,
because but I do it's gotten to where, especially if I'm traveling. Oh my gosh, I went to Scotland and I had to pick equipment to take with me. And I'm like, "How
yeah.
can I do this?" You
Like I
know,
said, I'm meeting Katie in Colorado into this month, and I'm like, "Oh, how am I? What do I need to take? What phenomena might we
everything.
encounter?" Like, I don't trust American Airlines with my luggage, so I didn't want to risk that.
Gotta be the carry-on. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably what I'll end up doing. And of course, TSA is going to look at the X-ray of it and say, sir."
They're very understanding, let me just tell you, because my carry-on had all my equipment, my backpack had more equipment, and I had, like, a week's worth of clothes in my carry-on with all my equipment, but I travel light, so, clothes-wise. And then my check bag was the rest of the clothes that, you know, because I was
Yeah.
there for almost a month. I had to have
Oh,
stuff. And but I wasn't going without my equipment.
yeah.
That was it was so funny.
It,
I'm
it,
just
it
like,
is nice though that some of the equipment is getting a little handier. You know, like
I
the
know, right?
Psionics camera is just so handy, and you can use it for daytime, night
Yeah,
vision. You know, versus all the other crap we used to carry. You know,
I
night
know, right?
specific night vision cameras and regular. So it's a little bit better.
It
But I
is.
still carry a digital SLR and some of this other stuff. And of
Yeah, I
course,
do that
experiment
because
packs I design. I have to lug those out too.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, you just want me to come as a pack mule, don't you?
Yeah. Any help? Hey, if I had a pack mule, I'd be all over it. You know,
I know,
poor
right?
poor creature. No, and I've got some unfortunately medical issues now that are limiting what I can carry and deal with. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I've got to get this stuff fixed because it's really limiting my ability to go out in the field. So
Well,
it's the cost of getting older, I suppose.
but beats the alternative.
Yes, it does. It does.
I'll take that getting older. Well, I we're so lucky though, because I would never have thought that I would be able to say to you, Trey, I'm physically ready to do this now. I really worked to get there. And when I was in Scotland, there were days that it was 10 miles of hiking and
Right.
walking and some on cobblestones, some on sidewalks, and then in the woods and stuff. And I got to where I could do that. And I was just like, well, look at there. I am going to
Look,
make a phone call.
look at this girl go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
still want to get out with Paul Sinclair, and James
yes.
and Steve Mira, and do some
Yes.
of the stuff out there. So that was an amazing. We just got back from Egypt and Jordan,
Oh my
and
gosh. What was
yeah,
that
so
like? Oh,
it was
I wish you had
it,
told me that.
it was fantastic. It was amazing, and as sad as this sounds with the current Arab Israeli conflict, between Iran and the Hezbollah, Hamas, and Israel, a lot of people were scared
Yes.
off. So, we went to some of these places and we went
Oh
to
my
Petra,
gosh.
had it to ourselves.
You did not.
Yeah, we were
Oh my
walking,
gosh. That's
you know,
my dream.
yeah, we were walking through the Sikh, and it's like, there's nobody here.
Oh my word. Timing is everything.
It is. It
That
is.
is so cool for you. Well, now we're gonna have to do a show about that.
Yeah.
So, because that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience.
What was which because we started a couple of minutes late, we've got a couple of minutes. What was your favorite part?
Probably my favorite part, probably the corniest part is, if you're offered a chance to ride a camel around the pyramids at Giza, even as hokey as that sounds, take it. Just do it, So
That's a
that was
given.
probably
Yeah.
that was probably the cheesiest. I really enjoyed the Valley of the Kings.
Mhm.
Saw King Tut down in his tomb. That dude needs some moisturizer in the worst kind of way. So uh, yeah, so we did that. So we went in a lot of the tombs. We went to Abu Simbel, which is right on the Egyptian border with Sudan. That was the temple of I'm trying to remember. It's not Nefertari. I'm trying to remember which temple it was. But anyway, when they built the high dam to create Lake Nasser, it would have been underwater. So they moved it up in a higher elevation and rebuilt the whole thing. So that was amazing. Uh, just fantastic. We went to some of the famous, the temples at Karnak, Dendera,
Oh my
all the
gosh.
ones you always read about. So we did a lot of that. The temples at Philae, which are actually on an island in the middle of the Nile. Ate a lot of Middle Eastern food, which I love. And then, of course, we flew to Amman, Jordan, and went to Mount Nebo, where Moses supposedly first
Yeah.
saw the Promised Land. So and then went to the Dead Sea. Got to slather Dead Sea mud on myself and float around in the Dead Sea for a while at a resort, and then went to Petra. And Petra and Jerish, which is another old Roman city there in Jordan, were just absolutely amazing. Just You know, I tell people spend your money on experiences and not things,
Mhm.
because you will always have an experience with you wherever you go, because it's always in
Yes.
your heart and in your mind.
I totally agree with that. And I'm so glad that my husband doesn't have any interest in leaving the US, and I'm I do. I love it. And I'm so glad that he's one that's just like, okay, I know the people you're going with. I know that you're going to be safe. I know that if something happens to you, that guy's going to be dead in the street somewhere because he would have died trying to protect you.
Yeah,
And because that's the kind of friends we are. And so, so it's okay for me to go with certain people.
right.
And I'm such a fortunate human because I do get to do that now. And it's
Yeah,
fun.
and travel builds a well-rounded person. From my experiences, when you see other cultures, you talk to other people, you experience different things, you really gain a broader understanding of the human condition.
Mhm.
For example, the Jordanians were some of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. Just so nice, so gracious.
Yes.
Very happy we were there. Loved us being there, and we're the absolute epitome of hospitality. Uh, so it's neat to see other people how they live, and what I found is mostly people are people just trying to get by day to day.
Yes. I agree with that. And I have Jordanian friends.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that you just confirmed that they're not anomalies
Oh no, no, they're just
because they're
just
some of the nicest people I know
just
too.
so gracious, so gracious. We had an opportunity to eat with a Jordanian family, spend some time there in Petra with them, and he was the father was a retired engineer, and his wife was a homemaker, but she had some other kind of side projects, and one daughter was a doctor, and the other one was still in university. And so we were invited to their homes, and just you would think the uncomfortable conversations. We talked about Christianity and Islam, and it was just very enlightening, and very carefree, and just happy and joyous, and very loving. Just
Yes.
fantastic, fantastic country. And people in Jordan wanted me to tell all y'all out there, come to Jordan, because
I'm down with that.
this silly war has really impacted
I'm sure.
their tourism, and they said we have got to have people to come to Jordan. So tell everyone to come to Jordan.
Well,
Nice,
you know what?
clean, safe country.
Well, with a great king
Oh yeah. Oh, King
and
Abdullah. Yeah.
yes, who lost his son in a very ridiculous way,
Yeah.
which, you know, but he was such a brave young man and would have been a great king himself.
Yeah. Yeah. King Abdullah has done so much for that country, and like I
Yes.
said, I felt very safe there.
Oh, sure.
Very clean. Just Egypt. Is a little different. Cairo's a different kind of vibe than Amman, but yeah, great place. Great place.
Yes. Well, I'm glad about that. I'm glad that you were able to take the time and come over, a little past the top of the hour
Yeah.
to share that because I think that matters.
Yeah.
The fact that, like you said, you were able to talk about, Christianity and Islam and, they're not polar opposites.
No.
It's a conversation that I wish that we could have globally without politicians pitting us against each other
Yeah. It
because
was. It was.
people are just people.
Yeah. It was really kind of funny because the father, Abu bin Amin was his name. And he said, "Yeah, my day usually, I get up and I go pray to at the mosque in the morning, and then I do that at midday." And he says, "Unlike you, we get extra points for praying at the mosque. Y'all don't get extra points for that kind of stuff, but we do, And it was
Right.
just kind of a funny comment,
That is.
because yes, you're right. That's part of your belief system, but very very friendly about it, and very understanding.
Well, probably very comfortable in his
Yeah,
faith and
yeah,
didn't mind sharing it with
right,
someone,
right,
which is how we're supposed to be.
yeah,
So don't push it down somebody's throat, but do
no,
feel free to share it. That's why
absolutely,
if everybody were like him, it'd be a better place.
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Well, tell people, where they can find your books. I've
Sure.
I've already, put yours out pretty strongly.
Yeah,
So
sure. Probably the best way, if you're interested in any of my stuff, is I now have a web page and a domain. Yay! It's TreyHudsonResearch.com, and there is a link on my webpage to buy the book. Uh, it tells a little bit about me and kind of my background and stuff, and so that's there. Uh, a lot of people seem to enjoy the book. It's out there on audiobook, ebook,
yes,
regular book, and in French, believe it or not. There's a European version of
I
it.
didn't know that.
Yeah, go out there and take a look. I think the ebook is only about, I think, $6, which I think personally, I think it's a pretty good deal. It's some interesting stuff.
That's a screaming deal.
So I'm working on the second one. Which is going to be called Return to the Meadow:
Yes.
Congruences, Explorations, and Revelations. So I'm
Ooh,
about 75% done with that. And
I'll
my
be buying that one too.
yeah, I'm just gonna keep going out there and learning things, experiencing things, and sharing them with the world.
Well, I, for one, am very glad that you do that because it's such important information and it's fun to read because there are so many anomalies that are happening. Oh, I do have to ask if you had any more drunk chicks show up and pee in your campground.
And no, and that's a weird thing because I actually got a message from her, from Miss X, and and
Did you?
she kind of came clean, I think, about this stuff. And I don't know how to categorize this. It's kind of, she wrote, she said, hey, a mutual friend, suggested that I listen to one of your podcasts, and I did. And I want to tell you, I am not a woman in black. I am not under some sort of control by, some otherworldly force. I just had saw your campsites, earlier in the day, and somebody had something about Bigfoot out, and I came back later that night, and after listening to the podcast, I didn't know y'all were experiencing what you were experiencing, and I'm sorry I interrupted it. And as for the peeing thing, when a girl's got to go, a girl's got to go. You know, eh, when you kind of,
Maybe not so much right in the middle of
well,
God and everybody,
yeah,
but
but
of
here's
course it was the headlights. So
but the latrine was like 30 yards away. A toilet, a
yeah,
public, campsite toilet thing. So uh, I don't
which
know.
she
I
would
mean,
have known if she'd been there earlier in the day.
yeah, she had driven by it if she was in there earlier in the day, and then the coincidences of going to the same university I went to and knowing the same people and just I don't know. It's to me, it's still a big question mark. I can't say
Yeah, that
definitive.
is.
So it's just one of those weird things of the meadow.
It is. So I just had to ask because
Oh
that
yeah.
was so random. I didn't know if maybe somebody else had shown up in the
No,
interim.
no, not yet. And when I lecture now, I don't even really mention that incident because I really, now that I know that it's a real person and they have recollection of that, uh, I don't know. I
As
just
far as
don't,
you know.
as far as I know. So I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, that was just so weird.
Yeah, it was weird. It was
So,
weird. And when you had, career paramedics, coming up to you later and saying that chick was the weirdest chick I've encountered in all the years of my career. That was
oh,
so strange.
holy wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have bought into that, but yeah, at least you got a letter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just chalk it up for, just one of those things that, makes you go,
Yeah.
and continue
Well, at
on.
least you haven't had anybody else drop in on you, so that's
No,
good.
no, no, no.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much because you know what? I love our conversations.
Yes.
And when your new book comes out, will you come back?
Yes, I will. And when I have the next outing that has an opening for guest researchers, you will be on the distro list.
Thank you so much.
You're quite
You still have
welcome.
my email, right?
Yes, I do.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you for being here. And for everyone listening, thank y'all too, because you know what? If it wasn't for you, I'd just be talking to myself with Trey. Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
And I will see you soon. And we'll see you soon. We'll be back next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Good night.